My name is Tia Norman, and I serve as a meditation guide, a meditation teacher, a pastor. I am also a mother and a daughter, hopefully a friend to a few people. And all of those things vocationally rest within a deep curiosity around contemplation and the contemplative dimension of the gospel and what that means for us today when it comes to our human experience and followers of Christ. We can define contemplation as resting in God or experiencing God. And if we're just beginning to explore these practices or being introduced to them, there are a couple of things to take into consideration. One is the myths that are connected to mindfulness and meditation, which there are many. And then kind of sitting with this question of, if we do decide to pursue this as part of our spiritual practice, is this really doing any good, right? Is this having any impact on me in the long run, and how is that impacting others or those around me? So a couple of the myths that I would offer that we can kind of just look at as we begin is this myth connected to mindfulness practice, contemplative practices, that when we meditate, that our mind is supposed to be completely empty. That when we move into whatever form of meditation we may be engaging in, that our thoughts are just supposed to somehow magically disappear. That obviously is not the case when we move into the experience of silence and solitude and stillness. The experience is actually quite the opposite. We notice that our minds are racing. There's actually a term for this called monkey mind. It's like the thoughts just won't stop. And so it's helpful as we begin to realize that thoughts are normal. They're part of the practice. They're part of our human experience, and we can actually begin to integrate thoughts to serve our practice. They actually fit into categories, and so that would require a bit of a deeper dive. But just knowing that your mind is not going to be completely empty, you're going to have thoughts. That's completely normal, and they actually serve you, is something that we can embrace. The second myth is connected to the first, and that is this idea that we're supposed to also like float off onto cloud 9 somewhere. So we're supposed to have this transcendent experience. Our mind is empty. Now we just have this great peace that we're kind of sinking into. And again, the experience, especially when we're beginning, is the opposite of that. There are very few periods in culture and society where we actually are in silence, where we are still, where we are alone. And we call that awkward silence, right? If anything is quiet, and if you and I were having a conversation, we would call it awkward. And so embracing the fact that by engaging to these practices, our awareness is actually being heightened. And so we notice everything that is going on within us and around us. So in addition to any thought, any little sensation in the body, an itch of the nose, we can start to label these things as distractions, emotions that we may notice coming up within us. So these practices help us to not only be aware of what's happening with us and in us, but to embrace those things. And so the question then comes up, if we're going to pursue this and move down this path, is, okay, well, I'll do this, but what is this really doing? Like, is this doing any good? Is there any benefit to this? And the short answer to that is there are are a number of benefits, and the main one that I would offer up today is that when we move into these practices, what we are equipping ourselves to do is to respond wholeheartedly to the things that are happening in our day-to-day lives instead of reacting based on emotional triggers. And so the fruits of the practice, if we dedicate, 5 minutes or up to 20 minutes of centering prayer and those periods of solitude, stillness, and silence, the fruits may not be experienced in the time period itself. The benefits are reaped in every other minute of the day. So moving into that place where we can respond wholeheartedly. So these practices help us to do that.